Have you ever been in a bad relationship that you knew you needed to get out of, but for some reason just couldn't? I'm not mad at you. We've all been there. And sometimes the bad relationship is with a job. Maybe this is you right now. And more than anything, you want to leave, but for many good reasons, you just can't. Whatever your circumstance or reason for staying when you want to go, it's okay that you can't break up physically, but that doesn't mean you can't and shouldn't break up emotionally. In this episode, I share the why, when, and how of breaking up with your job emotionally, especially if things are going bad, but even if things are going great. Hey, Creating Maven, I'm Joy Spencer, your Reframe specialist, with one important message. Your real work, it's not your job or your career. Your real work is what you create. And what you create is what sets you apart and makes you incomparable. It's your legacy. I'm here to show you a whole new way of working so you can create with your gifts, make a unique contribution, and finally get paid to be yourself. This is Reframe to Create. For those of you who need it, let me give you the stats. According to McKinsey, it is real out here in these streets. Folks are telling their jobs to kick the bucket. So far this year, more than 4 million people have already left their jobs each month, and it's not over yet. Another 40% of workers are considering quitting in the next 3 to 6 months. It looks like everyone is dumping their boo. First, it was the Great Resignation, and those who could leave their jobs did. Now the conversation has switched to quiet quitting, which is for those who aren't leaving but are withdrawing their above and beyond productivity ways. Whatever is going on, folks are getting out, and they're getting out of what they consider to be bad or toxic jobs or ways of being in them. These things can be contagious, so you might be asking yourself the same question. Should I? Should I also join in the fray? What is this all about? Why? What's going on? What's happening? According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor of Statistics, 62% of the people who are quitting say that the company's culture is toxic as all get out. So that's why they're getting out of there. And for 59%, it's that they have a low salary, which is just tragic in these times where we're trying and struggling with high inflation and all these insane gas prices. And 49% say their work-life balance is non-existent, which is no good. Others, 43% to be exact, see no reason to put up with a no remote work option in a COVID era, and I agree. And 42% are victims of just good old-fashioned burnout. Maybe you can relate. I mean, you've thought about it, haven't you? And you've probably experienced some essence or aspect of all these reasons that I've shared. Maybe even as recently as yesterday, and maybe you've got plans to throw on some shoes and just trot your way out the door of your job and just be like, bye-bye, suckers, bad bosses, be gone. These are all great reasons to break up with your job, but sometimes for many really good reasons, it's just not possible. I mean, you're an adult. You've got bills. You've got obligations. It's probably not a good time. You're also probably having a difficult time finding a better fit elsewhere that can, even make this a appealing prospect. Whatever the reason, it's just not going to happen, even though you may want it to happen real bad. But even if it isn't the right time to fire your job, literally, it's always the right time and a good thing for you to fire your job and break up with it emotionally. Why, you ask? Why am I telling you to do this? You know why. Because your real work, which I've been saying over and over again, your real work out here in this world is not your job. Even if some of your work may, be getting done in this temporary vehicle of the job, it's still not your real work. Your real work in life while you're here is not your job. It's not your career. It's what you create. And specifically, it's what you create with your gifts. And this is so much bigger. This is what it looks like to live purposefully, to understand your work in these categories, in these frames, and to see a job or career as a temporary way that you might be living out and bringing to life the work that you're here to do. And so your real work demands so much from you emotionally, because creating is not just a physical act. It's very much an emotional act. And so you really don't have often the time and the bandwidth to do both, to be so emotionally invested and engaged in a job with all its machinations and all that's going on, and to at the same time be able to focus on your real work of creating with your gifts. You know this. I hear this from a lot of you guys all the time. I really want to create more. I really want to do all this stuff, but I get to the end of my day, I get to the end of my time with my job, and I'm just spent. And you're not just talking about being physically spent. You're talking about being emotionally spent, trying to figure out why this latest change is happening on your job. How's it going to impact you? What's going on with this? What's happening with this new project? Or, the boss is moving this other thing around, or you have a new boss, or some other thing and change is happening. It's constant. And this constant churning around, and you also being emotionally attached to it, is sucking all of your creating power. There's an activity that my colleagues and I do in our OD work, especially following up after engagement surveys with groups. So we'll do these focus groups, and a lot of times we'll use what we call a stop, start, continue activity. And how it works is there may be an issue, let's say around collaboration or communication, a question that the group wants to dig deeper into to understand how they can work better. And so we'll come in, and the question that we'll ask them to think through is, what are some things around communication, let's say communication is the topic, that your team can stop doing, start doing, or continue doing in order to go from good to great? The reason we ask it this way, the reason why we have that end caveat to go from good to great, is because we're giving the reason. We're not just asking, what can we stop, what can we start, or what can we continue doing in general. We're couching it in the context of in order to go from good to great. And I bring this up because I want you to think about that context of why, when I'm asking you to really consider breaking up emotionally with your job, it's not just something to do. It's not just because it's a trend and everyone is doing it, or you should, sort of jump on a particular bandwagon. But it's set in the context of everything that we're doing here at Reframe to create, and what you've been on this journey with me to figure out. How can you create with your gifts? How can you be about your legacy? How can you be doing your real work? And the reason why you need to break up emotionally with your job is so that you can create, so that you can take that emotion and all of that passion and all of that fire and really put it into creating with your gifts. It's in order to go from being so job focused that they get all of your emotions to being focused on creating, and that being what gets your energy. That's your version of going from good to great. Now, I'm not telling you to do anything that I know is not challenging. I'm speaking from my own personal struggle bus experiences. Woo, child, I've struggled, and sometimes I'm still struggling. And being so emotionally engaged in the ups and downs of a job can make you a raving lunatic of sorts. It gets you out of your stuff, always trying to prove, always trying to work to control what's happening in your environment. You're in this kind of mud pit, just wrestling with the challenges of work life. And this has got to stop. We are being too emotionally involved in our jobs, and it's like being in an unbalanced relationship, a relationship that isn't mutual, a relationship where the other person is engaged in a transactional interaction with you, and you're like all emotionally involved, and you think this is like the love of your life. And it's not. The love of your life is not your job. It's your purpose. It is creating with your gifts. So that's the why. That's why you need to break up emotionally with your job. Well, how can you know if this is you, right? When is the right time to do it? I mean, I know I said in general, anytime, every time is the right time. But really, how can you do an assessment of yourself to see if this is you? Well, what I've learned from my own experience is these two things. One, when your why is coming from a place of annoyance rather than curiosity. What do I mean by that? So, a lot of times I've had experiences in work where there are different things that are going on, different changes that are happening. And it's sort of really getting me into a tizzy. And I'll start asking why. Well, why is this happening like this? And why is this going on? And why can't they make this make sense? And it's that why is always from a place of annoyance. I'm not really curious. I'm not asking why because I truly, genuinely want to know why. I'm asking why because I'm really irritated, I'm really frustrated, and emotionally involved and engaged in whatever cheese has been moved around, and really emotionally over involved. So I want you to ask yourself that question. Look around and just think about your day. Are you asking why constantly, but it's coming from a place of being really annoyed and just irritated about why things don't work or why they're working a certain way? That might be a clue that you are emotionally over-invested and you're putting your emotions in something that you really should be taking and bringing up with that job and getting ready to put that emotional effort into curiosity and putting that curiosity into what and how you will create. The second thing is when you notice that your focus is on things that are outside of your locus of control. Most of your time is spent trying to figure out, trying to make better, trying to understand things that are really not in your lane. You just have this broad and wide open mind to take in and experience all and everything and all aspects of sundry of what is going on at the job. And really, this isn't helping because, again, we have limited time, we have limited energy. And how much of that are you spending thinking about and focusing on how and what you're going to create? And the third thing is you're just not creating. If you look at your life, as you look at what's going on with you, how much creating is happening versus how much creating was happening a month ago or even 2 or 3 months ago. That's a signal to you that you've become overly emotionally involved or invested, and that it might be time to break up. It might be time to really take back that emotion, because if the creating is not happening, something is blocking it. If the creating is not happening, if that emotional investment is not there for creating, you're putting it somewhere else. And often it's on the job. So how do you know when it's your when and it's your time to really break up emotionally? When your why is coming from a place of annoyance, not from curiosity. When most of what you're focused on is outside of your locus of control. And when you just see that you're simply not creating. There's just no evidence. Things are not coming to life. It's time to break up with your job, at least emotionally. So how are you going to do this? How are you going to break up with your job? Well, first, in episode 20, I talk about your boundaries and how boundaries are not about saying no, but they are about saying yes. And it's the same principle. Breaking up with your job emotionally, as you know, is not about being cantankerous, and it's not about just saying no to the job, but it's about saying yes to creating, saying yes to your purpose. So that's what you need to do first. You need to recommit to creating. You need to say yes to creating. You need to say yes to being a creating maven, someone who consistently creates with their gifts and makes this a priority by finding a way to do this first in your day. If you need help and a reminder with this, check out episode 6, which is about establishing a creative hygiene practice. This is about finding small ways to consistently bring creating back to the center of your life. And when you're doing this with your time, you're necessarily investing your emotion in it and with it. So recommitting to create with your gifts is the first step, and actually setting aside time to doing that. First thing, a little bit every single day. And then you need to reframe on your job. You need to remember that your job is not your real work and that your job serves a purpose that supports your real work. It's meant to be in the background. It's meant to be your sugar mama or your sugar daddy or just the sponsor. It's not supposed to be the main boo that you're spending most of your emotional energy on. Let it be what it needs to be, whether it's giving you the skills or the exposure of whatever it else that you need to have it be, whether it's whatever contribution you want to make in that space for that time, because it's part of your overall goal of creating with your gifts and the work that you're here to do. But don't for any second get so emotionally involved that you're in annoyance constantly or you're unable to create. That is absolutely unacceptable, my creating maven. It's time to bring those emotions home. It's time to break up with that job so that you can truly and fully create with your gifts. Not just some of the time, but all of the time. And it's not just going to help you. We're all going to be better for it. This is what freedom looks like, my creating maven. In episode 42, my guest, EJ Obadegu, came on and talked about for her how creating and baking was freedom for her. And for you, creating can be such freedom as well. Not just potentially financial freedom, but emotional freedom. You now know the why, the when, and the how of breaking up with your job emotionally. And my creating maven, I know you have the courage to do this. Do you know someone who's emotionally over-invested in their job who just needs to get out of it so that they can create more? Then share this episode with them and ask them to follow Reframe to Create wherever they listen to their podcasts. See you soon, creating maven. Until then, remember to always ask yourself, what will I create?